everyone, my name is Az. Welcome back to my channel. Hope everybody's having a lovely Christmas and lovely holidays. Today I'd like to talk about something a little bit different. I've been covering my scrapbook collection, but I just think maybe it's time to break that up a little bit. I will get back to the scrapbook collection, but I just feel a little bit stuck with that at the moment, a little bit stagnant. I've been looking through those scrapbooks for the past sort of week when I've had the opportunity, and I just need to sort of have a change, guys, because it's just getting a little bit samey for me. So I thought maybe we'd just have a look at something else and discuss something different today. And I thought it might be a good opportunity to have a look at the Invincible album, Michael's album from 2001. Um, just something different to discuss. I think we'll get back to the scrapbooks maybe next week. And for now, maybe we'll just have a chat about something else, just a slight change of direction. So this was released in 2001. I think it was October 2001. Um, so I wasn't, the musical landscape at that time was quite different when this was released. I mean, obviously in pop music, you had Britney Spears and NSYNC, I suppose. MTV was kind of quite in a pop place, I suppose, with that stuff. And what was the show? What was the show? TRL or something like that. Carson Daly, was that the guy who hosts that show from Times Square in New York? Britney was massive at that time, actually. And Justin Timberlake was sort of at the beginning of his solo career. He was still with NSYNC, I think, but he was angling, I think, for the for the spot for the Michael Jackson vacancy, because Michael had been around. I mean, Michael finished his history tour in 1997. So, and we'd also, of course, had blood on the dance floor. But it had been a few years, I suppose, and things changed dramatically within music. Back in the UK, the big thing was Oasis and Britpop and that whole scene from the sort of mid 90s into the mid 2001, I guess, really. You had the Spice Girls. Yeah, there was some big pop acts at that time. But Michael sort of disappeared after the history tour in '97. But from what I understand, Michael went straight into the studio less than a week later to begin work on his new album, which would be Invincible. Obviously, Michael had his children as well at this time, and he was married to Debbie Rowe. And it was, yeah, things had begun to change in the musical scene, I guess. But I was in a different place musically in 2001. I very much got into Oasis and the whole Britpop scene in the mid 90s. Oasis had a huge impact on me, and although I was still into Michael, I obviously loved History, and I went to see Michael on the History tour in '97, and I also really liked Blood on the Dance Floor for what it was. I guess we'll discuss all of those at some point. But by the time 2001 had arrived, I was in quite a different headspace, really. I'd been to India with my brother in 2000 or 1999. In 1999, I'd been to India with my brother, and I got big into Bob Dylan at that time. My father's a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I grew up with Bob Dylan, and wasn't much of a Dylan fan at that point. But we were on a beach in a bar in Goa in India, and they played a Bob Dylan album, Blood on the Tracks, which I'll probably discuss at some point. And to hear that as an adult and to understand the lyrics and what it was all about, having sort of listened to it as a child and not really kind of understood it, that was quite mind blowing, and that took me in a different direction. So I was big into Dylan, and then of course Oasis got me sort of into the Beatles, and I was big on the Help album, actually, the Beatles Help album. It's still one of my favorite albums, and then big on Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band as well. But I was I wasn't really sort of keeping tabs on Michael in the early 2000s. Other things were going on in my life. I was becoming an adult, I guess, and sort of having different experiences and going to clubs and bars and just sort of enjoying my early my early 20s. How old would I have been? What, 2021 when this came out? So I do remember hearing a preview for You Rock My World on MTV. They So MTV done this segment on MTV News. They had these little newscasts on MTV, these hourly updates, where they went around New York and they played for people "You Rock My World" on a I think it was a little Sony Walkman, and what they said at that time, I think, was that "You Rock My World" had leaked. Now, from what I understand, I believe that it behind the scenes, Sony sort of deliberately leaked "You Rock My World" to sort of push Michael Jackson in the direction of wanting to release "You Rock My World" as a single, because originally Michael Jackson wanted to release "Unbreakable" as the single, as the lead single. And I mean that it's the first track on here, and Unbreakable. I can understand why he would want to release Unbreakable. It is quite a good track. But this album was sort of difficult for me in the beginning, and for many years, it wasn't a favorite of mine. I remember being in HMV in Cork City, a music record shop, and hearing it and being quite taken back by the style of it. I think it was 2000 watts they were playing in the shop, and it just didn't sort of hit me in the way previous Michael Jackson albums. So I hung around HMV for like 40 minutes and sort of listened to as much of the album as I could hear. And it didn't strike me immediately as previous albums, as bad, Dangerous History had. It was quite different for me. Um, and the sound just, I don't know, I think I found the sound initially quite jarring and quite sort of loud, and the production on it was quite different. I found it very different from the History album, which is an album that I absolutely adore for its production and its sonic style and the way the album sounds. And the same with Bad, the sonic landscape of those previous albums, Bad, Dangerous History, and the five original tracks from the Blood on the Dance Floor album just was just really beautifully produced compositions and tracks and music and melodies. I'm not saying there wasn't melodies on this. This album is full of melodies, but the production is quite different. And of course, Michael used a different guy to work on this. This was produced by Rodney Jerkins, primarily, I guess, and the sound is just probably well, it is quite different from previous Michael albums. But the lead single, "You Rock My World," I liked it. I The first way I heard that song actually was on that preview on MTV News, and just hearing that seemed quite good. I mean, I felt quite sort of, I guess, enthused by hearing that. The short film for it didn't do a whole lot for me initially. I did think Michael was borrowing too heavily from Smooth Criminal, the short film, and from the Dangerous live performances. But I mean, it had its moments. I liked the color palette and the sort of aesthetics from "You Rock My World." But just in general, I thought the choreography was a little bit samey. The production was a little bit sort of the visual, the storyline for the "You Rock My World" short film was a little bit, I don't know. I don't know if it really sort of went anywhere in particular. If you watch the full length of that short film, it seems there's not much of a story there, but there's some really big cameos there from, is it Michael Madsen is in that, and obviously the, oh my god, Marlon Brando has a cameo role in that at the end, and quite, I mean, quite nice to see some iconic an iconic actor there of the big screen, I guess, old iconic figure. But the short film itself, I don't know. There's some nice moments in it, I guess. But I mean, this whole album, I suppose, and that whole time as well is kind of colored by the politics behind the album and the discourse and stuff that was going on behind the scenes with Michael and his label Sony Records. Michael didn't want to tour this album. Michael told his label he was also leaving the label after this, I believe. And there was a major fallout between Michael and Tommy Mottola, who was the president of Sony Music at that time. Things got a little quite out of hand and quite ugly, actually. But setting all of that stuff aside, I suppose, just listening to it as an album, I had, what was it? I had three major issues with the album initially, and those issues were the sound, which I thought was too abrasive and too jarring to my ears and just too loud. So the sound, I thought it was mixed far too loudly. Now, that was a style, of course, at the time because of this whole sort of brick walling situation that came into music production. I think it was towards the back end of the 90s where they began mixing albums, pop albums in particular, very, very loudly. And that was for radio to catch people's attention when they heard any sort of singles that were released. And then all of the albums, most of the albums from that time were brick walls. So basically, if you sort of, how do you explain the brick walling thing? So it's if you have a musical wave and it goes in waves like that, it's basically cutting off at the top and the bottom of those musical curves, those waves. So you're left with a little compressed piece of music in the middle. So basically the loud part, and then the peaks and troughs are sort of, so the bottom end and the top end are missing, and it's just the loud middle section you're left with, which for a Michael Jackson album was a little bit disappointing because his albums sonically were so well mixed. Bruce Swedien. Now, Bruce Swedien did work on this, but I guess really that comes down to the mastering of this album. Um, all of Michael's albums previously had been mixed by Bernie Grundman, I believe. Now, this album was mixed by Bernie Grundman as well, but what happened with this album was Michael had already missed several deadlines with the release date of this album, and at some point, another release date was put in place, and Michael couldn't miss that deadline. So this was rush mastered, I believe, by Bernie Grundman at the 11th hour, just to sort of get this album ready on time to be released on time, because several deadlines had been missed as usual with Michael. But I mean, it's a shame, really. But I mean, I guess that just comes down to Michael and his production team not being organized enough. I mean, I say that somewhat. What word am I looking for? Um, there's a lot went on behind the scenes with the making of Invincible. I'll put it that way. There was a lot of disorganization went on behind the scenes. That's no diss towards the album itself, but things didn't go as smoothly as previous albums because I guess there was nobody there steering the ship like Quincy Jones, no sort of boss, no sort of father figure. I mean, Quincy Jones, regardless of what has gone on with Quincy Jones in recent years, whatever you say about the guy, he was a master record producer, knew what he was doing. He had his reputation preceded itself as well. So when Quincy was in the studio, he was very much a, a figure of authority and somebody who you listen to and somebody who sort of got the job done and was very clear in his directions and what he wanted with album production. And yeah, Quincy knew what he was doing. I'm not saying that Rodney Jerkins didn't, but Rodney Jerkins was a young kid who had success with Brandy and some other R&B artists that Michael really liked. He was a young guy. how old was Rodney Jerkins? I think he was 21 when he worked on this album. And to be fair to Rodney Jerkins, he did make the Michael project his entire life by sleeping in the studio and working on this album morning, noon, and night. And he tried to, well, he did, I guess, push himself to the very limits. Michael, I think, said to Rodney Jerkins that if you work with me, you need to push yourself to another level, and it needs to be the best material you've ever made in your life, etc. So I think I understand where Michael was coming from with his choice of producer, and Michael, as well, being a pop artist, wanted to remain current and wanted to have the latest sounds. But I just think so. Yeah. So getting back to what I was saying, and I have sort of went off on a tangent. Um, and digressed slightly. So the production, the sound production, the mastering was too loud. One of the other issues I had with the album was that there was too many tracks on the album. So there's 15 or 16 songs on this album. How many songs are on this album? There is 16 tracks on this album. It's over 77 minutes long. And I think I think the album would have worked better if it had maybe been, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 songs, just to tighten it up. There's a lot of different experiments in this album, I think. Well, and then the third issue I had with the album was the track sequencing. So what I mean by the track sequencing, obviously, is the track selection and the way the tracks are laid out on the album. So, for example, the first three songs, you've got Unbreakable, Heartbreaker, and Invincible. And I just found, and I probably still, to a large extent, find that a really, really sort of loud, abrasive attack of the ears, and it becomes quite samey by the time you get to Invincible. Now, I think Unbreakable is a great track, the opener. Michael did want that to be the original, wanted that to be the debut single from the album, and he had this whole concept of what he wanted to do with the short film involving him, what, on the roof of a building with fire or something, and a whole lot of special effects in it. But I think the budget for what Michael wanted to do with the short film didn't fit with what the record label wanted, because the promotional campaign behind Invincible cost something like $10 million, which is hell of a lot of money, I guess. But then I suppose when you're dealing with Michael Jackson and it's a promotional campaign on a global scale, you're talking the entire world. $10 million perhaps isn't so much, but I mean, I suppose when you sort of break it down to brass tacks, it's quite a lot of money. So then I suppose Michael demanding that a short film be made, and that, Michael's short film for Unbreakable would have ran way over budget and would have been in the, I don't want to say the tens of millions, but it would have been probably touching 10 million, considering that the Scream short film from the History album cost, was broke the record for the most expensive short film music video ever made. Michael would have wanted to break his own record, no doubt. But so just having a look at the tracks on the album, I do like Unbreakable. Heartbreaker isn't bad. I, I, I I've learned to sort of appreciate that. Invincible is okay. I think my feeling of a lot of the tracks was because when I listened to it on album, and by the time you get to Invincible and you've had Unbreakable and Heartbreaker, you're quite tired at that point. But melody wise, I think Unbreakable is the stronger of the three. Track four, Break of Dawn. I really like Break of Dawn. I think that offered something quite different. I think, is it Dr. Freeze who does the backing vocals on Break of Dawn? I think that sort of actually gave the song a unique kind of feel to it, just given that Michael's vocals, and then sort of juxtaposed with Dr. Freeze's background vocals. I think it gave it quite a nice twist to that track, and I really do like that track. And then we get to a track, Heaven Can Wait. Now, I'll be honest, guys, as I try to be. It's a track that has eluded me in terms of its reputation. This is an absolute fan favorite from what I understand. Heaven Can Wait, and it's taken on a new life in recent years on social media with the younger generation. And I mean, I'm absolutely delighted that a track from the Invincible album is after sort of hitting in that way. Is it TikTok or Instagram, or I don't know, because I'm not really on social media, but I know Heaven Can Wait is quite popular with younger fans. But it's just one that I just couldn't personally take to. I found it too meandering and too sort of boring, for want of a better word. I just felt personally that the song doesn't really go anywhere, and that there's not much of a chorus, and it just didn't do anything for me. Now, I have mentioned that to fans in the past, and I've been told I don't understand R&B music, and I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just a personal preference, I guess. It's just one that didn't excite me personally. You Rock My World. Yeah, so I've discussed You Rock My World already. So there was two physical singles released from the album, and obviously the record label got their way and they released You Rock My World. Um, so yeah, I've discussed that. You Rock My World is good. I really like it, actually. I think it's one of my favorite tracks from the album. I think the track would have benefited immensely if it had used real musicians, real music, and you had a genuine brass section on it. I think it would have lifted the whole production. I listened to somebody on, I think it was the MJ cast, discuss this song, and I tended to agree with their take that it would have benefited massively from real instruments on it. But I mean that uh, it doesn't take away overall from the song, but I think it would have just lifted it definitely to another level. And I do like it. I do like You Rock My World. For me, possibly one of the last Michael songs that hit in that certain way, that was just a really melodically enjoyable, nicely produced, nice sounding, pleasing to the ear, fun Michael song. Fun is a weak word, but I really liked it. But one of those last singles from Michael that I think just was sort of laced with that specific Michael sound. And then the other single, of course, was Cry. And Cry is Cry. I like Cry. I like Cry. This was an R. Kelly track, wasn't it? I believe it was an R. Kelly track. Yeah, it was an R. Kelly track. The single comes though with a B side here, Shout. So Shout was supposed to be on the album, and it got replaced at the last minute by, I can't remember the track it was replaced by, but Shout was intended to be on the album. But it was nice to get Shout as a B-side, because Michael didn't give fans original tracks on his B-sides. With his singles, as I've said before, that they B-sides tended to be previous singles and previous album tracks, which was fair enough. But then on here, you also have, on the CD, you also have Streetwalker, and then you've got Cry, the short film, on this as well. So this was one of those dual. See, this was that time with CDs where they were giving you like the music video, so you put into your PC and you were able to access the music video as well. Michael didn't appear in the music video for Cry. I think at this point I think at this point communication had completely broken down with Michael and his label. He protested in London on the top of a bus around London, against Sony, his record label. He attended some party and sort of basically said that he felt Tommy Mottola was the devil and very devilish, and there was a lot going on there, I suppose, at the record label. Michael said he was leaving the label, as I've said, but then there was, I think there was what really sort of pushed that dispute over the edge was that Michael was a part share owner of Sony Records at that time because of his ATV catalog and his Beatles catalog, and I think there was a lot of jealousy from the record label, and I think there was a lot of vying as well to put Michael into a position where he would be indebted to the label and he would be in a position where he'd owe them money, and then there was a sort of maybe 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 a strategy from the record label to have Michael in a vulnerable position and then to sort of use Michael's assets as a bargaining chip. So if Michael was indebted to his label and couldn't financially afford to pay them back, then they would perhaps push for his ATV catalog, thus sort of removing him from the picture of being a part shareholder in the label. Now that doesn't excuse, I guess, either Michael's part in the sort of breakdown in the breakdown. I know fans like to sort of put it all on Sony, and although Sony played their part, I think maybe Michael as well sort of could have could have maybe sat down with the label and worked things out and come to a reasonable agreement, because by the time you get to Cry, Michael isn't in the short film, and it's quite disappointing really. And then after Cry, of course, there's no physical singles at all. There's a few promotional radio singles, I think, and I'll just have a look here in front of me. So the album spawned two official singles, that's You Rock My World and Cry, and then three promotional singles, Speechless, Butterflies, and Unbreakable. But it's sad that things sort of went awry and things sort of fell apart, I suppose, by that point. But that's, I guess, getting away from the album itself. So you have Heaven Can Wait, as I said, it just didn't do anything for me personally. Then you've got You Rock My World, and then you've got Butterflies. I liked Butterflies. I think the group were Flowtree from the UK, um, who gave Michael that track, and he absolutely loved that track when he heard it, and he wanted to include it. Very R&B flavored track. Sorry, I haven't actually sort of gone into the type of tracks that a lot of these are, because I've sort of gotten sidestepped by speaking about the whole sort of fallout. But so Butterflies, I guess, is sort of an R&B tinged track. Really nice song. Nice song, that very summery feel to it. Speechless, the next track, was a personal favorite of mine. I really liked Speechless. I thought that was really Michael-esque, and I think Michael wrote that. Did Michael write that song? Okay, I won't waste time just looking through my iPad here that I have in front of me, but I think Michael wrote that song. You know what? I will waste time and I will just quickly look at the track listing here on Wikipedia. I don't know how accurate Wikipedia always is. I know people can access things and change things up. And yeah, so Speechless was one of the tracks solely written by Michael. So Michael wrote two tracks on this album, Speechless and You Are My Life. You Are My Life. Did Michael? No, Michael didn't solely write that, did he? No, there were several other writers on You Are My Life, including Carl Bay Sager, who had worked with Michael on the Off the Wall album, actually. What else did Michael write on the Invincible album? You know what? I think Speechless is the only one coming up here where Michael solely worked on. Um, yeah, I think, okay, The Lost Children. Yeah, that makes sense. Michael Jackson and Brad Buxer. I guess Brad Buxer would have worked on the musical arrangement with Michael. Um, but that was another thing about the Invincible album, I guess, is that there were a dozen different writers and producers working on the album. There were three or four different studios running simultaneously with different people working on different tracks. Michael wasn't always present at the sessions. He sort of allowed the producers and songwriters, engineers, and the musicians he just sort of let them get on with what they were doing, and then Michael, I guess, would just sort of pop into the studio. And yeah, I mean that, I think Michael just wasn't as present at the sessions for this album, and maybe that sort of comes true in the overall feel of the album. I don't know, but there were so many different people worked on the album. Perhaps it loses its sense of conciseness and consistency. So Speechless, Michael track. So this is the vinyl. So on side three, then you've got 2000 watts. So 2000 watts divides a lot of people. It's highly experimental. I think this might have been the track actually that replaced Shout 2000 watts. So Michael is singing on his lower register on 2000 watts, and it's quite a futuristic, dancey sort of. It's very reminiscent of what NSYNC were doing at the time. Actually, they were doing that sort of stop start futuristic dance pop music style, and I think that's what that's sort of reminiscent of. Now, I'm not saying it was influenced at all by NSYNC, and I'm not comparing Michael to NSYNC in any way, but it just sort of reminded me of what was going on in the music scene at the time. But for Michael Jackson, I guess it's quite experimental. And initially, I didn't like 2000 watts. I just thought it was a step too far for Michael, and it didn't really suit Michael's style. But it is experimental, and it is sort of pushing the envelope on what he was trying to do. And so, for that alone, I suppose it deserves credit and it deserves a spot on the album. Not everybody's cup of tea, 2000 watts, and I can sort of see that track from both perspectives, really. Um, but being objective about it, I did come to sort of appreciate it for the fact that we don't really have any other Michael track like 2000 and 2000 watts. It's completely different from everything else he's ever released, in my opinion. So for that, yeah, I kind of like it that it sort of has its place on the album. You Are My Life. You Are My Life is the one he worked on with Brad Buxer, as I said. I like it. Typical Michael ballad, um, um, about his kids, I guess. Um, there was a video in the video probably on YouTube from about 10 years ago. No, you know what? I'm actually mixing it up. I think it was it on the Martin Bashir documentary or something from the mid noughties that incorporated the You Are My Life song and footage of Michael with his kids. Perhaps I'm completely mixing it up. But I do like You Are My Life. It's very Michael and very nice song. It's also one of those tracks, I guess, unfortunately, that critics just sort of, it gives critics everything they want to be able to criticize Michael and act rather condescendingly towards him. Privacy is an interesting one. Privacy is an interesting one. It's so I have to say I didn't think much of Privacy. I found it too much a caricature of Michael's previous albums. So, I mean, on Thriller you had Beat It, which is an incredible rock song, and then Bad followed it up with Dirty Diana, which is superb. On Dangerous you had Give In to Me. Um, and then you had quite a few rock tracks actually on History, and but this one sort of incorporated a story about Princess Diana, and Michael is sort of asking, okay, so this ties in as well actually with Leave Me Alone, and it's Michael, it's an anti media song, which Michael, at this point maybe it was a bridge too far, because we'd had Leave Me Alone, we had Why You Want to Trip on Me from Dangerous, which I really like. Trip on Me actually from Dangerous. I think it's a really interesting song lyrically, and I think it's a really underrated track. because I think Why You Want to Trip on Me on Dangerous is grouped with the bulk of the new Jack Swing tracks on the beginning of the first half of the Dangerous album. I think it's sort of overlooked, but I think it's a really good track, really interesting. Privacy Privacy for me didn't quite work. Michael also alludes to Slash playing the guitar solo on here, and of course, as we know, it's not Slash; it's another guitar player. I can't remember the name, but I, I like it now. I have come to sort of kind of I've grown rather fond of Privacy, and I think I think excuse me, excuse me. Um, that's going to be in the video now, so excuse me, I won't be able to edit that out. I have grown rather fond of this album overall. I think, especially since 2009, I've come to appreciate it. And I think at the time I took this album for granted when it was released, and I just had a feeling that Michael wasn't going anywhere and he'd be around forever. Likewise with Prince, actually, but that's another conversation, I guess. But I've grown rather fond of Privacy. It did feel like a little bit of a caricature to what he'd done before, and I think that was a problem for me with a few of the tracks on the Invincible album. Don't Walk Away. I really liked Don't Walk Away. Okay, I guess the argument for Don't Walk Away that people sort of bring up a lot is that it's perhaps a poor man's Man in the Mirror, perhaps it's a poor man's Keep the Faith, although people make the argument that Keep the Faith is a poor man's Man in the Mirror as well. I love Keep the Faith. I absolutely adore it. And I understand the argument here that Don't Walk Away is sort of more of the same, and it's just Michael trying to serve the same as he had, but to a lesser extent. I think for me initially why I liked it so much was again because of that reason, because it was more of what Michael had given in the past, and it was sort of the Michael sound that I gravitated to. So I liked it, and then I went through a phase where I kind of swayed to the other side of the argument, and reading a lot of feedback from fans on some of the Michael forums. So um, discussion on the my MJ forum, which is where I kind of spend a lot of my time discussing Michael. Great forum actually. So I would advise you to have a look on the My MJ forum, where we had quite interesting discussions on that track and on the album in general, because it's quite a discussed album. Maybe the most it's the most what is it? It's the most discussed Michael album, absolutely. It's the most controversial Michael album. It's the most criticized Michael album. It's the most loved Michael album. It's the most underappreciated Michael album. It's the most overappreciated Michael album. It's there's a lot of discourse on the Invincible album within the fan community, but I liked Don't Walk Away for the fact that it gave me more of the older Michael that I loved. Cry, yeah. I mean, Cry. We discussed Cry. Michael was out at this point. He didn't want to release Cry as a single, and I completely understand why. It's a very mediocre R. Kelly run of the mill, same old color by number song that just serves more of the same sort of um, anthemic stuff that R. Kelly was doing at the time, a la I Believe I Can Fly, and what was the other one he had? What was the other big one he had? I can't remember, but very samey. I yeah, I sort of to and fro on that one. I to and fro. I'm sure my opinion on it will be changed now if somebody sort of gives me all the reasons why I'm wrong and why Cry is such a cool song. It's okay. It's okay. It's very average, and I think that's a I think that was the problem for me. I think there was just too many tracks on the album. The Lost Children is next. The Lost Children is next, and um, I like The Lost Children, but I don't know if this was the time and place for The Lost Children. In all honesty, I think I see a lot of fans say. I think. so a lot of fans say who are not, particularly enamored by the song. A lot of fans say that it's too Disney and it's too soppy, it's too saccharine, it's too, yeah, it's all of those things. And then at the same time, I guess I like it for though in that way as well, for all of those reasons. Perhaps, I don't know, maybe it's a step too far for an album in 2001 that's making the claim that Michael is invincible, and then you have a song like The Lost Children. It is very saccharine. I will concede, but I do like it. And it's a song only Michael Jackson could have made and released. And then it's also one of those songs that he would be highly criticized for, of course, because of what it's about. And but again, because we live in such a cynical world, and we live in such a fake world as well in this day and age, that Michael would be criticized heavily and laughed at. And the reviews were all condescending and sort of backhand. Even when they were trying to be complimentary of Michael, there was a lot of backhanded, nasty comments. Whatever happens. So whatever happens then is the second last song. This is a great track. This is a great track. This song features Carlos Santana, and when this was released, Santana, I believe, had already released his Supernatural album, which is a really really cool album from back in the early 2000s. That Santana album actually is Santana, and then every track on the album features a different musical artist as a guest, and just full of, I guess, Santana's cool guitar solos and guitar licks and riffs. But so it was good to have Santana here as a guest at the time. And I think that's, for me, sort of gets back to what I'm saying about the Privacy track. So Privacy didn't feature Slash, but Whatever Happens did feature Santana. So I think we could have removed Privacy, kept Whatever Happens, and then just sort of made a bigger deal of the fact that you had Santana as the guest guitarist on the album, and that would have filled that sort of gap that Michael wanted to have on his album, just to follow the trend of Thriller featuring Eddie Van Halen, Bad featuring oh my god, Bad featuring Billy Idol's guitarist. His name escapes me. We had Slash on Dangerous, and I think we had Slash on History as well. But we had Carlos Santana on Invincible, and I think that sort of fills that gap. It's a cool track. It's a cool track. It has that sort of summer Latin flavor that was huge at the time, that Carlos Santana sort of was famous for. And I guess that was Carlos Santana's influence at the time with his Supernatural album, that it sort of made popular that Latin American flavor to the music. So Whatever Happens has that Latin American flavor to it. It's a really, really nice track. And that would have made a really cool single. That would have made a really cool single at the time. Justin Timberlake had Senorita from his debut album, and Senorita is all right. It's a good track, actually. It's a good track, but I think Whatever Happens is a better track, and I think it would have been a potentially big single for Michael, especially with the endorsement of Carlos Santana playing on it. And then the album finishes out with Threatened, which I guess is a sort of I don't know if to describe it as a modern day Thriller song, I guess isn't completely accurate, but it's dealing with those supernatural themes that Michael liked to include on some of his albums. Well, there's Thriller, and there's Ghosts on Blood on the Dance Floor, and there may be one or two more that Is It Scary on there, and maybe one or two more that have escaped me right now. But so ending on Threatened was quite good, I think. So for me, I suppose if I was to pick my favorite tracks on the album, they would be Unbreakable, Break of Dawn, You Rock My World, Speechless, um, Whatever Happens, Threatened, and at a push, I might include 2000 watts, simply for the fact that it's experimental, it's highly unusual for Michael, it's completely original in terms of the other material Michael did, and we don't have any other track like it that I know of. Now, there's an argument to be made as well. I guess that Shout could have featured on the album, and it's arguably a stronger track. Perhaps it is actually, but so I'll go with 2000 watts just for the sake of the discussion, and yeah. So so as I said as well, like, it was the sound of the album. It was too loud and too jarring for me. And then a number of years ago, I purchased this. I purchased the MOV version of Invincible, so the music on vinyl version of it. And this mix of the album really changed my mind a lot on the album as a whole. There were things I heard on the MOV version of the album that I just could not hear on the CD. So this brought the album much more to life for me personally. And it also made me feel that if the album could be at some point remastered, and a lot of the production that's buried deep in the mix was sort of brought more to the fore, and if it could be remixed, so I would like a remix. Now, I'm not one of these people who's pro everything needs to be remixed, because I think up until this point, I think all of Michael's previous albums have been remixed to perfection, and even remasters really are not needed with Michael's previous albums, because the original pressings of all of Michael's original albums are absolutely incredible. They're phenomenal in their sound. Sonically, they are just they blow me away, and that's much of the appeal for me of Michael, is the fact that his catalog sounds so incredible. But I do think that this really sort of elevated the album for me personally, at least. And excuse me again. And I do highly recommend this. I do highly recommend this. So that sort of went a long way to changing my mind on the album. And I do appreciate the album. And then when Michael passed, unfortunately, in 2009, I sort of saw the album in a different light. And I think the further away I got from the album as well, I just began to overall appreciate it more. And the fact that it was Michael's last album, and we would never have an album of original material from Michael again, just makes me appreciate it all the more. So back in 2001, this was my CD. For some reason, I went with the orange cover. This was the one I was drawn to, although it's missing its white spine here. But that's the one that I seem to gravitate towards too, and I picked up. And then, of course, when I met my wife, she basically had everything. So this is the standard original. And to be honest, I guess this is actually my favorite. This is actually my favorite, like the white and silver. And if I was to go back and buy one copy, I would buy this one. Um, so Michael then, the label then released the album. There's the orange one again, quite faded there on the spine. There's the blue. So there's the red. So these were released then as part of a marketing campaign, I guess, to boost sales of the album. I guess to boost sales. A lot of people aren't into that, but I mean, I don't mind it personally. But I am a person. I'm not completist in that sense, although it is nice to have all of the five colors. Um, but for me, it's all about the music, and as long as I have one copy that has all of the music, then I'm more or less pleased. So I was happy with that. I was happy with that. Um, so yeah, I'd be interested to hear anybody's, you know, to hear the opinions of you guys in the comment section. Thank you to all my 11 subscribers, by the way. I really do appreciate it. And to anyone who's viewed any of my videos, I really do appreciate you for taking the time to listen to me and to watch my videos. I have deviated slightly, well, a lot in this video, I guess, in terms of what I want to do. I will go back and have a look at the scrapbooks. We'll get through the bad era. I have about a dozen scrapbooks, and I just needed to talk about something else because it was just getting a little bit bad overload, and that's sort of what happens to me is I overload on something and then I need a little bit of space from it. But we will get back to the bad era because it's one of my favorites and it's absolutely perfect. And I look forward to making those videos and getting back to that. So having said that, thank you everybody for watching. If you like the video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. If you like the video, I would really appreciate that you subscribe. If you don't like the video, you don't need to do that, and you don't need to thumbs up either. I'm not particularly after thumbs up and subscriptions, but then at the same time, I suppose it's nice, and I suppose I am, because I would like to grow the channel. I'm not. It's not something I'm fanatically chasing or anything. So I guess I'm just sort of making videos that with things I'd like to talk about. But yeah, I wish everybody a happy Christmas. Have a lovely holidays, and I'll talk to you soon, guys. Thank you ever so much for watching. Bye.